let's get started. Set the scene for us. Where are we this week?
We're headed up to Canada, the land of snow and maple syrup. We're going to Alberta, the gateway to the north, and I'm excited. One thing we got to look out for when we're in Canada, though, is they have an exceptionally high rate of hometown robberies. So anytime there's a Canadian fighter that's in a match, you always want to tip the nod just a little bit that way. So heads up, everybody.
Here we are in the mighty north. The mighty north. Let's get down to business right now. First off, I'm going to bring up something here so I have all of the market moves. Here we go. All right. Let's get going here. Right now. Beautiful. Okay. Got it up on, where is it? Sorry. Got it up here on, fightingsportsbookreview.com. UFC. Let's start off with this Giacomo Lemos versus Tanner Bozer spot. Bozer opens up at minus 145, is now at minus 170. A 25-cent move towards Bozer. What's your play on this fight?
This one is really, really simple. If there is one play that I've got on this fight card that you're going to fade me or not tail me on, this is probably the one. I've got a system here. When you take these middle of the road heavyweights where anything can happen because you never know what these guys are going to do, you roll on the dog. I'm going to bet Lemos because this guy is a brick shit house. He's massive. He is not technically very solid, but he's a beast of a man. Whereas Bozer on the other side has a technical advantage, but he is much, much smaller. And I expect that Lemos has the opportunity to just run this guy over with sheer physicality. Getting plus 150 on that kind of a shot, I'll take that all day.
Taking the dog to get things rolling. I like it. Next up, Kyle Stewart versus Eric Koch. Kyle Stewart opening up at minus 153. A huge move towards Eric Koch. Koch opening up at plus 135 is now a minus 110 pick'em. What's your move here?
So I'm going to be on Koch. He was one of the ones that I'm on that side of the line move. This guy used to fight as far down as 145. He was going to be in line for a title shot with Jose Aldo after knocking out Rafael Assunção. Those of you who are fight fans know just how damn good Rafael Assunção is. He's got one knockout loss on his record, and it's to this guy. He was one of those guys that was just killing himself to cut down in weight. Finally, it got to him. He moved up to lightweight, about 10 extra pounds. Didn't really go for him well there. So he's taken about a year and a half off. He's been training at some other gyms, sharpening his skill set. And if you look at him on Instagram, he has packed on about 10 pounds of solid muscle. I expect him to come in here and be a completely reinvigorated version of himself. Getting dog money or even money on this kid is the way to go because his opponent is still unproven in the UFC. I've got Koch at even money. Koch.
Koch. I had a captain of my AUG team named Chris Koch, and a guy I looked up to, such a leader, and met him one night, years after we played hockey together, and it was hammered, and it was back when we had 4 a.m. last call in Vancouver, and he came to me and he was saying all these things about me, about my play on the ice and how much I meant to the team and the dressing room and all this shit, and it was so nice to hear. And then I turned my back and started talking to somebody else, and then the girl I was with said, "We got to get out of here right away. That guy just grabbed my ass and asked me why I was with this fucking loser." And so that's how I remember Chris Koch. Okay, let's keep rolling along. Sarah Frota, Jillian Robertson. Jillian Robertson opening up at minus 150, now minus 120. A 30-cent move towards Sarah Frota. What's your action on this fight?
Well, first off, Chris is a dick. Second off, I'm going to be on the other side of the line move again here, man. I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson. This girl is a monster. She's got relentless forward takedown pressure. And Sarah Frota, while she is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, she is all too happy to take the back position and let someone get on top of her, basically. She has next to no takedown defense. She came in massively overweight in her last fight, fighting down a weight class. So she's moving up because she has to. She's going to be the larger woman here, but she's tall, she's lanky. I expect Robertson to be able to land takedowns on her no problem, grind out a win, or even get a submission.
Interesting look. We have an interesting card coming together. He's backing Jillian Robertson. Okay, now, next up, we have... I may not be pronouncing these names right. We have Divison Figueiredo And Alexander Pantoja. Pantoja opened as a dog at plus 100 and has quickly become the favorite in this fight at minus 120. Who's your spot here?
You did pretty close, Jimmy. Pretty damn good, but it's Pantoja. You actually do pronounce the J on this one. Figueiredo is a murderous power puncher. He's incredibly strong for the division, but he got completely outclassed in his last fight. And if any of you recall, we were right on that one. We faded this kid because if he can't land that knockout bomb, you're probably just going to be able to stick and move your way to a win over 3 rounds. Pantoja is going to do the same exact thing to him. We're going to go back to the well. We're going to fade this guy at the top end of the division one more time. Pantoja's completely well-rounded. He's got great offensive grappling. He's got sick jiu-jitsu. He's got knockout power in basically every single limb. The dude's the complete package. We're going to rock with the more well-rounded fighter here. I got Pantoja.
We got Pantoja. Pantoja at now becoming a favorite. Pantoja seems to make a lot of sense. All right, next up on the docket here. And I noticed, too, that we don't have a Holloway action for you. So I do want you to touch on that game. And I know what's most important to you is putting money in these guys' pockets so you focus on the fights where you have the clearest edge. And I respect that and love that. Let's go. Christoph Yoko versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Barriault opening up a plus 145. There's been a 15-cent move towards him. He's now a plus 130. What's your move on this fight?
So I'm going to roll with the dog just one more time, Jimmy. You know how I do. In MMA, the dogs have the absolute most value. You're locking 2 human beings in a cage and anything can happen. Get that extra value. Marc-Andre Barriault, he made his UFC debut in his last fight, and he notably struggled with the grappling in that fight. There's no lying about that. But his opponent put on a career all-time high performance to grind out a decision win. He looked like he was going to get him completely out of there in the second round, finishing by TKO. The dude doesn't stop. So even if you're going to try and wrestle him to a decision, he is never going to give you that opportunity. He will fight until the very last bell. He's got knockout power. He's got really solid stand-up. Yoko is a guy who everyone thought was going to be contending for a title, and then he just kind of fell off the face of the planet. He took some serious damage in a couple shots. He bounced back in his last fight, getting a win with a wrestling-heavy type of game plan. Now, Marc-Andre Barriault, I have on good word, has moved up to Canada for at least a little bit of time to work on his grappling at TriStar, where those of you who may not be familiar, GSP trains out of. So if he's working his takedown defense, he is ready for that grappling heavy game plan. And all he's got to do is land a bomb. Yoko's chin is completely shot, and he is not the kind of grappler. He's not a lifelong wrestler type of guy. I don't think he's going to be able to keep up a 3-round grind fest on a guy like Barriault. And fighters are known to have an adrenaline dump. The very first time you make it to the UFC, a lot of people lose because you're just not ready for the big stage. You're not ready for the big lights. You're nervous. You're in front of your family, your friends. And a lot of people eat that first loss. I expect Barriault to come back better here. And Yoko is so far gone that really Barriault's just got to clip him once or twice and he could go down.
All right. We like it. Marc-Andre Barriault. We got Marc-Andre Barriault at a big plus line. So we have 5 plays so far and 3 pluses, 2 of the big dog variety. Let's move on to the next spot. Nico Price versus Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal opening at minus 260. A 90-cent move towards Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal now sitting at minus 350. Nico Price at plus 285. You got a spot here?
This is the fight where we make our cash, Jimmy. This is our long shot. This is our lottery ticket. We are going to bet on Nico Price. This line is just way, way too wide. Neal is a fantastic fighter. He's got excellent striking from range. He's got good distance control. He has great defensive striking. But Nico Price is a brawler, and he forces that brawl with basically everybody that he fights again. He's going to get in there and make this thing ugly. If he makes it ugly, he's got offensive submissions where he can choke out anybody, and he's got power from every single angle. He's one of the only people in MMA to ever actually land a KO from bottom position. He's got a highlight reel knockout where he was on his back and hammer fisted the dude upwards like this and knocked him out freaking cold. Plus 280 is just way too juicy. This is one you roll the dice on. You're saying the guy's got like a 20 or a 25% chance to win this fight? Not even close. The way he finishes, that's the great equalizer. He's probably got about a 35-40% chance, so we're getting line value here with this dog.
Wow, exciting. Top Set says Nico Price is a nut. I like it. Mr. Fatfa says Jeff Neal inside the distance. But big dogs, our guy Clint, our guy Maximus in 3D, Animarak, star of the Die Hard MMA podcast, going after big dogs. 4+ prices on his 6 fights and 3 of the big dog variety. And you've come up with a parlay for this card. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. This is a 2-unit parlay, Jimmy, and you know how I go. 1 unit at a time unless I really like it. So we're rocking 2 units on this one. We're going to take Viviane Araujo and Arman Tsarukyan. Remember, I kicked off the top of the show saying you don't avoid Canadians in Canada because of the way the judges roll here. I'm fading 2 of them back-to-back in this parlay. So this is going to be dangerous, but I believe in both of these fighters. Now, Viviane Araujo is 7-1-0, and she stormed on to her UFC debut. Her last fight, she was a short notice replacement, came in and dominated from bell to bell, being the smaller woman up a weight class, and then got it finished by TKO in round 3. Absolutely phenomenal performance. Alexis Davis is a well-known commodity in MMA. She's fought some of the big names, but she is very obviously on the downside of her career. We've got a young up-and-coming, hungry fighter with a well-rounded skill set facing off against an aging veteran who's probably very close to the end of her career. So we're going to use Araujo in part of this parlay. The other side of that is going to be Arman. Now, this dude made his UFC debut and also dropped the ball. He lost his UFC debut to one of these Russian monster wrestlers, and he showed some very impressive signs in that fight, and that's why he's such a big favorite even after losing his debut. The dude is so physically powerfully strong. He got in there and literally just stood up with another man on his back. I mean, straight up, hooked his leg, stood straight up. No problems at all. He's physically insanely powerful. He's facing Olivier Aubin-Mercier, who's a grappling specialist. Dude has no knockout power in any of his limbs whatsoever. He's a grappler, and all he does is basically grind his way to a decision. Unless you've got no submission defense, then you give up a choke or something like that. That ain't happening here. This guy is so much stronger. He's going to be bigger. He's going to have the grappling advantage, and he's going to be on top of OAM from bell to bell. So Arman Tsarukyan and Araujo are going to give us about plus 110, and I'm locking up 2 units on it.
There is the parlay. Araujo at minus 253, Arman at minus 194, giving you a plus 111 parlay. Absolutely great breakdowns from our guy, Animarak. And question, Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway. At this point, I see that you're staying off of it. What is your feel on this fight? Do you have a lean? How do you think it's going to bring out?
Well, if I can touch on both the main and the co-main, Jimmy, do we have time for that?
Definitely. Spencer, Cyborg, and Edgar Holloway. Take it away.
Awesome. The reason I'm avoiding both is because the lines are just way too damn wide. So in Cyborg versus Felicia Spencer, Cyborg just got knocked out stiff by Amanda Nunes, who's the greatest women's MMA fighter of all time. Prior to that, Cyborg had been on a 20-fight win streak. She hadn't lost in something crazy like freaking 15 years. She KOs basically everybody. She's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Cyborg is completely legit in every sense of the word, in every aspect of MMA. Felicia Spencer came in. She was supposed to be kind of a stepping stone for her last opponent, and she ended up choking her out in the first round. So she really lit up the world here. She's a legitimate submission threat. And Cyborg has shown some cracks. In her last 3 fights or so, she's been taken down. She's had her back taken. She's been controlled and pressed up against the fence. These are all the things that Spencer's going to do and potentially do them better. So if you're looking for a punt play, if you're not happy with Nico Price and you want to throw a half unit on a big dog, Spencer's the one to do it on. I don't trust Cyborg coming off a KO loss like that to tie her in parlays or anything like that. And the line is way too wide to do anything with her. So it's dog or pass in the co-main event.
Dog or pass in the co-main event. Interesting. Sportskeg says Spencer's slow and experienced, doesn't know how to throw her hands, 0 defensive striking skills, has the fight IQ of a fighter with 7 professional fights, 1 trick pony, attaches herself to, wrestles you to the ground, takes her back, and sinks in a rear naked. Sportsgag is taking the TKO round 1 at plus 130. And people backing a lot of your action here. Our guy Jonathan Succi loving your parlay. Jeremy Miller says Edgar Holloway to go the distance at plus 150. What's your breakdown of the main event?
So this one is one where the legend Frankie Edgar, I'm a massive fan of this guy, probably doesn't deserve a title shot here. Max Holloway just moved up to 155 and got shoved back down to 145 by Dustin Poirier, who got the belt. So he's the current champion at 145, but he's coming off of a loss, which puts him in a bit of a weird spot. This seems to me like a spot where the UFC is throwing their boy Frankie Edgar a bone. You don't really deserve another title shot, but you're a legend. No one's going to complain. Here you go. But it's also a get well spot for Max Holloway. Max Holloway is going to be the bigger guy in there. He's going to have a huge reach advantage. And Frankie Edgar gets hurt in basically every single fight. Max Holloway's got legitimate, good, solid takedown defense, but he's never fought a wrestler the caliber of Frankie Edgar. So there's lots and lots of questions here. The fact remains, I think Max Holloway gets it done. It's going to be the same thing that he did to Jose Aldo. He's going to overwhelm him with volume, defend the takedown. If he gets put on his back, he will get back up. He's got a very underrated defensive grappling game. I don't see him getting pounded out or choked out or anything like that. And if this gets into round 3, round 4, I know Frankie Edgar's got a good gas tank. He's actually really well known for that. But Max Holloway's gas tank is legendary. It's completely on another level from anybody else. He will volume add up on Frankie. When Frankie gets hurt, he goes for the takedown to protect himself. Max won't let him off that easy. He'll keep pounding, precision, fast punches, and overwhelm him. I think Frankie Edgar loses this thing by KO. I would say round 4 TKO by Max Holloway.
Round 4 TKO Max Holloway. There is our guy, Animarak, breaking down all the fights. We got dog lines, we got parlays, we have it all. Thank you so much for joining us. Clint, where can we find you on Twitter? Tell us a little bit about your MMA podcast.
I'm at Maximus in 3D on Twitter if you want to follow me for all my nerdy stuff. If you want just my MMA content, I'm at the Die Hard MMA Pod. And I've got a podcast everywhere you can listen to podcasts at Die Hard MMA Pod. Give me a listen. We break down all the fights into depth, have a little bit of fun, talk about some stuff, always doing shots of Fireball. And I'm looking forward to bouncing back this week. We made a couple mistakes last week. I posted a small losing night, less than a unit losses. We were basically guaranteed to have a minus 0.75 unit loss or up as high as 3.5 units. If any of those last 3 picks came through last weekend, we were having a winning night. All 3 of them shit the bed. So I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get here this weekend. I'm ready to make some cash.
Get after it. There's our guy, Animarak. He's on Lemos, plus 154. Koch, plus 100. Robertson, minus 130. Pantoja, minus 118. Marc-Andre Barriault, plus 147. Nico Price, plus 235. The Parlay, Araujo and Serkian, minus 253, minus 194, respectively. At plus 111 is his parlay. And there he is, representing Phoenix, Arizona, by way of Minnesota. Animarak in the house. Thank you so much for joining us, my man. Have a great weekend and good luck on Saturday.